I can't help thinking, somewhere in the universe, there has to be something better than man. Has to be. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ascension to 10.
All right.
Here we go.
Oh,
There it is.
oh, who is that?
Who's that?
Who is that?
Whoa.
Special guest
It's a monster
with us.
from the blue. It's a monster from the Blue Lagoon.
I'm here.
That's right. You heard right, folks. It's Bri.
Yeah, cue the air horn.
Was that a news
What's up,
bulletin?
boys? What'd you say?
D.
Morse code, yeah. What's up, boys?
Headlining news.
Yeah,
Brian has
hold on
joined
here.
us.
This is what we need.
That's too much. Oh my god, how long was it gonna go?
It's a 45-second clip on this thing.
45-second applause. I do not deserve that at all. That was so extra.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what our second sound effect after the drum tap.
Yeah.
We got that
Besides
in
the drum.
What did you?
wasn't gonna say. Yes.
And Brian added it in one of the episodes.
Oh yeah.
One of our recent.
That's right,
episodes.
because that was from our former
attempt.
Yeah.
former
software.
platform that we
Yeah.
used once.
Right.
It was
Yeah,
terrible.
we probably shouldn't trash it, but it was trash though.
Yeah.
It was bad.
was.
No, it was
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
That's the only
Yeah, we
redeeming
didn't use it.
quality was that singular
That
drum sound. That's it.
we were able to isolate that sound and take it
Yeah.
with us, so that's good.
Yep. Take that one. Put it in the bag.
That's right.
So,
Boys.
So the reason that we're all actually together is because we're going to talk about something cool. This is a special.
Well-
We're going to talk about Severance.
you're forgetting one aspect, though.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
this is a
Okay.
special, and that is the reason we're all here. The primary reason we're all here, though, and are graced by Brian's presence, is that he was able to put down Wizard of Oz for more than a couple of minutes.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean,
I was gonna say I just finished it before we hopped on. It's just like my meditation, sitting in front of the TV like a second grader, legs crossed.
I mean, he was hopscotching around, redoing Sound of Music, recently too.
That's
so.
true. Oh man, yeah. That actually, I don't know. That whole experience was like a typical day experience for me. Just
Going
we
out
don't
there?
have to go into it, but
Okay.
it
Well, we
was
haven't
great.
had a
It was
typical day.
awesome.
No,
Was
we
that-
haven't had a typical day in a minute. So you want to kick us off? Kick off this episode with typical day.
Yeah, well, okay. So this is not going to be as bad as the magnet story. I think that is literally like I don't think I could even get down to bottom bounce off of that one. But I haven't thought about how to tell this story. All I will say is that I'm 34, going to be 35, and I consider myself in pretty good health. I try and take care of my body. And so when I was thinking about this trip to Colorado, we were shooting a music video, 2 of them. One of them was going to be up there, but like in my mind, I was like, I grew up going to the mountains, snowboarding, like never had an issue. How bad could walking be? And like, so, and also I'm like, whatever, it's May. It can't be that cold up there. I even looked at like, weather patterns in like higher altitude areas and like, oh, it's going to be
Sure.
like whatever, like 38, 40 degrees, something like that. Like that's nothing. But I packed according to that mindset of, it's not that big of a deal. And thank God Alex has experience. He's the guy who's shooting the video. Had experience and a lot of extra clothing, because as soon as we got to that high altitude, I, for the first time in my life, felt like my entire body was betraying me. like, like just the simple task of like, he's like, all right, action. And it's like walking up the great, a hill that's like, whatever, like this. I would get to the top and I'm just like, and he's like, all right, let's do it again. Walk back down. And I was like walking down. There was a certain point where we were up above the tree line, and I was like walking where there were some snow patches and whatnot. And he's like, all right, well, I need you to go. So we're going to shoot a drone shot. So we're going to be a ways away from you. Take this walkie-talkie and just go over there. And over there was like down the hill, and then there was a snow patch that like broke, and it was this piece of grassy area, like hillside, with some cool trees and whatnot. And he's like, I want to get you like coming up over that, and so we'll just radio when we're ready. You let us know when you start walking, and we'll hit you with the drone shot. And so like, cool, no problem. I walk down the hill and I get to the snow, and I look at it, and I'm like, from my perspective, I see so many foot tracks. I see like I think like maybe like an ATV had gone over that area or whatever. Like it looked like it had been walked on, and I was like, I didn't even think twice about it. So just start walking through, and all of a sudden my fucking leg just goes, and I was instantly in like slushy snow, like quicksand snow, up to like it was between my belly button and my nipple line, and just instantly sunk down. I had that moment of like, am I gonna be able to get out of this? Because I like started trying to climb like a little idiot. Like I probably looked like a baby because I was like army crawling my way out of the snow. But then because I knew that every step after that was just going to be me sinking down, I was like,
yeah,
like I made my body as wide as I possibly could, and just like
that's what they
just
teach
skimmed
you, right?
across the top like an alligator to the other side. Yeah, it was that. And then being at the top of the mountain for the final scene, I think my like body ratio of, I don't know what happens when you get that high, but like my oxygen to carbon dioxide level was like, way out of whack. And I'm not conditioned for that. But the final scene, I'm supposed to act like I had been on a long hike, so winded.
Right.
So like when he says action, I get to the top and I'm like breathing like that. And so he's wrapping the camera around, and then I like, when the camera aligns with my face, I'm singing the final words. And every time we did that shot, oh my God, probably like 20 or 30 times. And every time I feel like doing those like deep breath inhale exhales would just throw that balance completely out of whack. And at one point my legs started to get wobbly. I started to get vertigo, and I was like, I can't hang here. Like, I don't think I'm gonna be able to finish the music video. Because it was just, it was brutal. Anyways, that was my typical day experience, just thinking that I would be fine. And I wasn't. Like, at one point, my fingertips from like here up, I have a picture of it. They were yellow, like white yellow. And then the rest of this was red. And I was like, I don't know. Anyways.
I mean, in your defense, you were also, when you were walking up the hills, probably singing, or like, right?
Yeah. In some of the scenes, I definitely was.
Yeah. So that, really that adds to it.
Slow-mo video of me. There's one section in the music video where I fall down, and I had to like trip and fall like around 10 times and like tumble down the hill. So just spent an afternoon tumbling. I'll send you guys the video. So it's pretty fun. Yeah. But anyways, that was my typical day experience. Just expectation versus reality was not, it was a learning
That's
experience.
one of those terrible things. Yeah. When you get older, like now we still have this mindset that we're still like have the ability of our younger 20s. And then you go and do stuff like that, and you're like, oh my gosh, this shouldn't hurt as bad as it does, or like this should not be as hard as it is.
Well,
you're coming down.
That's what happened to me last weekend.
Well, we just talked to Jordan last week. Decides he's gonna work out for the first time in a coon's age, and here he is,
of course,
ripping something in his crotch or something.
I mean, yeah, I work out once and I feel like I got a hernia, and it. I think it was kind of some kind of groin pull or something.
Yeah.
I was doing upper body stuff, and I pulled something in my groin.
I don't know.
That whole weekend was a typical day for me. It was such a disaster last weekend. And golly, since you're here, Brian, I feel like you'd appreciate it.
I'm so ready.
Spenny too, but so typical day 2 for this episode.
Yeah.
This computer that I use to record on and do all of the artwork, all the Photoshop for this show. We have a YouTube channel now, so all the video editing that I do for the show, it's all done on this computer, and I've had it since 2017. I've never backed it up a single time, and I was trying to make all these YouTube videos in quick succession to get the show caught up, or the channel caught up, with where the podcasts are, and stupid Premiere just wouldn't let me export these videos anymore because I didn't have enough hard drive space. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just go out and get a big external, and I can finally back up this computer, and then I can have all this extra space. Well, I do the first backup, and it takes several hours to do. It fails at the very end, and it didn't say why. It just failed at some point hours later, and I tried to just do it again. It just kept failing. So I ejected the drive, and then the computer just started to act really weird. I tried to shut it down. Then it wouldn't start, and it would boot up about halfway and then just nothing. And keep in mind, the backup didn't work, right? I get this hard drive to back up the computer, and it doesn't work at all.
You'll lose everything.
So I'm doing these troubleshooting stuff, and I call Apple, and they walk me through this step, and then of course that didn't work because the fucking mouse wouldn't connect to the computer. And then so I had to cancel that call, find a mouse that would connect to this computer. And then finally I got to the step where the first technician tried to get me to, and I called back, and they're like, okay, well, yeah, just reinstall the operating system. And so I do it, and he's like, not enough hard drive space. And the guy said, bro, I've never heard of this problem before. This has literally never happened in the history of Apple.
Bruh.
and so I say, well, okay, is there another option? He said, well, you could just try and turn your computer back on and see if it'll boot up and just let it go for a few hours. Or you're going to have to do this all over again and just wipe the hard drive and lose everything. And so the act of me trying to back up the computer caused the computer to crash to a state where the only opportunity or the only solution was to wipe the whole thing. So had I not tried to back it up, this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And
that's crazy.
Luckily I didn't do that. I didn't follow the guy's advice and did some other research and stuff. Long story short, I got it all backed up, wiped the system anyways, reinstalled everything, good to go, fresh slate. But that was Friday night through Saturday. And then I work out Sunday, tear something in my groin, and it was a disaster. An entire typical weekend.
Oh, yeah. That's that sucks.
So,
I mean, I know that this happened because you were messaging about it. I'm glad that it sorted itself out. And there's nothing more frustrating or scary than technical difficulties like that. So, very typical day. Yeah.
Would have lost literally
there's literally nothing more frustrating than when technology just takes a complete dump on you. Yeah. It just makes you enraged.
Speaking of which, this has been teased now as a special episode. And this, like the pilot episode, we're going to repeat because of a couple of reasons.
Whoa.
Oh, man.
There's two reasons why we're doing this today.
Yeah.
Number one, this is the Severance episode that Spenny and I have been teasing now for a long time.
Yep.
Spenny and I sat down to record this months ago after the season wrapped, after season 1 ended.
Yep.
And we recorded this 90-minute episode, and it was a complete disaster. because
Well,
this was on our
that
old
segues
platform.
into my typical day. So I had computer issues. So the reason that Severance was so terrible, and then there was 3 episodes that we did that got really messed up, and it started with the Severance Special, which thank God no one heard. But then it also went to I think it was Bright and also Alien. All 3 of those I had issues with connectivity, and I found out that my laptop just does not care about Wi-Fi, so I have to have an Ethernet cord. But the problem is my laptop doesn't have an Ethernet port, so then I had to buy a USB connection, and I ordered one, and then I didn't look, and it didn't have an Ethernet port, so then I had to order another one and make sure I got one with the Ethernet port. And now I have a 100-foot cable coming across my entire house from the router connecting into my laptop. And every once in a while, the kids or my wife or I will just trip over the cord because I have to pull it all the way across the house because I have no other way to get it to connect. So, yeah. So that's part of the reason why we're redoing this.
This show there's been an ever-evolving state of Spenny and I's setup for this show. We keep buying equipment to make it sound better, and it keeps sounding worse. I think we're finally at a state now where it sounds good.
I think
but Spenny's had so many different iterations of his space, and basically the one where he's at now, when he finally got all this stuff, it looked so hilarious to me because he had his microphone stand anchored to a desk behind him that he was extending completely out. He has this Ethernet cord drug across his house. It's so funny. I think we'll make an artwork.
I do have a video and a picture of it.
Picture of that setup.
I think that's necessary.
And so basically that first episode, the connection was so bad we were doing it on Google Meet, and we couldn't hear each other. We were 3 to 4 seconds behind each other and in front of each other the entire time. So one person would be talking, the other person would interject on something at that point completely irrelevant to what was being said. And then it was just a terrible discussion too, because there was no format, it was just stream of consciousness, and it was a disaster. So
not a good foundation for stream of consciousness. Yeah, the Google Meets.
Yeah.
So
and the other reason that we're redoing this is because Brian obviously would have needed to edit to produce that episode, but he hadn't watched Severance yet, and so he didn't want to be spoiled. So we had to wait for him to stop watching Wizard of Oz so that he could watch this. So that he could watch this show, so we're finally at the point where Brian's caught up with the show. We're all together, and we're going to give this another shot. Yeah. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, let's do this. I'm ready to. Yeah. Let's see if we can best the one that will never be heard.
Okay. Well, we already did because we can hear each other talking at the same time as we can respond. So
true. Yeah, we have Brian.
We already got a leg up on that one.
True.
Yep. So I think we're gonna try and break this into a few different components, because last time, again, it was all over the place. It was jumbled and it was just a mess. So for this recap, and at this point, we'll just say that this will be a discussion and recap of season 1 of Severance. So if you haven't seen it and want to see it, you should probably pause this episode and come back to it later after you finish it, because we'll talk about a whole bunch of spoilers and everything that's relevant to the show. If you don't want to know, come back to this later. So spoiler warning over, spoiler territories to come.
You've been warned.
So we'll talk about how the show looks and why we think it's so great, the show itself, the content, the setting, and the characters. And then we'll talk about theories or any other kind of miscellaneous stuff after that. Yep. So as at the end of the first episode, when I watched this, I was texting everyone saying that this already is the most amazing show I've ever seen. And all you guys were dunking on me and clowning on me. It was like, oh, how could you say that and stuff? Oh
man.
You're an idiot.
Well, it was so easy.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Whenever something like that comes out of your mouth, I have to oppose that. It is my God-given design to push back on it. But
can we talk? Yeah, can we so there's a little story that needs to go with this. So, and it goes in lines with dunking on Jad. So we used to always play Risk, and then we used to play a drinking game called Brisk. So like the more beers you drank, the more armies you got while you're playing Risk.
That's right.
But Jad and I would used to always we'd always start out as an alliance, and then 5 or 6 moves into it, he and I are like just butting heads because we can't move anywhere. So I always just turn against him.
You're painting the wrong picture, Spenny. That is partially true, but this is a crucial detail you're not telling the audience.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
okay,
we would be
ahead,
butting
Jad.
heads, and it's because you would propose an alliance at the very beginning, and then we'd have 5 or 6 rounds, and then it would be you would save up enough so you could have 500 armies or something, and you put them right next door to wherever we were adjacent to. You'd obliterate me in whatever territory I was whatever continent we had agreed on that I would take. You'd obliterate me, and then I'd be out of the game and then you'd be out of the game because you stretch yourself so thin. It'd be like, the situation would be,
You get so pissed.
I would get so pissed, and I'd fall for it every time because before you'd pull me to the side.
No,
right? No one else could see.
This time, we're just gonna stay in alliance.
Yeah. I think that this is the turning point right here, because I wanted to push back on it so bad, and this show just ended up being, it's definitely a top. And I know this because I want other people to see it. Like I've told Corey, our friend Corey, who will probably eventually be on the show. He and I generally like the same kind of things, and I know without question when he watches it. And it's part of the reason that I want to watch it with him. I just know how addicted, how it is going to just go straight to the top of his list. I'm calling it right now. It will be his favorite show. And I know that going into it because I know what he likes. And I was that surprised by it. I think I was a little off put because for some reason, the very first thing I ever heard about it was that it was a show produced by Ben Stiller. And I was like,
So this goes back to, because our very first episode, our new pilot, right?
Yeah.
We were doing our lists, and I put Severance at the top of my list, and we talked about Ben Stiller being it. Yeah. And I don't really have opinions about Ben Stiller, but it seemed this was not part of the discussion, but it kind of seemed like you had things to say about him that you didn't necessarily like.
Yeah. So I've thought about this because I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. I think it's just the Meet the Fockers series. And the character that he plays in that is it's so obvious that he has planted that in other things that he's a part of. But I love him in Dodgeball, in Along Came Polly, and I can't think of anything more recently. Zoolander obviously is a classic, but I always just felt like he kind of played that same character. Yeah. I don't even know how to explain what it is, but he just gets shit on consistently the whole. I mean, I even like The Secret Life of Walter Mitty a lot. That's such a good movie, but I feel like he gets
that's why I feel
dunked
that
on
was
repeatedly
kind of his...
in that movie until the very end. That's not giving anything away, but it's just
but I feel like in that one he kind of this has elements of that from that movie in this show. I felt because there's a lot of creative ways that he shoots things, and there's kind of the way he captures and tells a story, and I feel like that kind of came into Severance.
Yeah. I think it was the mention of his name, the immediate thought of the acting of his that I don't gravitate towards. Not that it's not good, because it's just not for me. And then you trying to say it's one of the best sci-fi series, hands down. And I'm like, that just doesn't make any sense to me, but I totally get it now.
Yeah.
And it's a thriller.
I don't even, because
that's the other element.
The audience should know he's not in it. He's not a character in it at all. And so he's, I guess, an executive producer, right?
Mm-hmm. But more so than sometimes people get that title and it's because they funded it. Euphoria, Euphoria is a show that I really enjoy for the camera work and the music and stuff. And one of the first names that pops up in the credits is Drake. And Drake, he's not in the writing room he's not part of set design. Mm-hmm. I haven't done any big research into it, but he's not a major player. I just think he's probably a major money player. But anyway,
with his name on it makes it more impressive.
Yeah. So Spenny, you said in that again in our new pilot that, because I haven't seen The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, but you were saying that the cinematography is pretty similar.
Yeah,
Is that true?
so you know those scenes where like, so in like the beginning there's a scene right at the beginning where he walks into the building, and it's like perfectly what's the word I'm looking for, symmetrical when it looks like at the parking lot and stuff. There's a lot of things where he does that in The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, and there's just ways where like he kind of frames up different characters in that movie. So you see the perfect picture for every time they're in the scene, which is cool, and they do that a lot in this movie.
Yeah, he definitely spent a lot of time. One of the things when I was looking up just like fun facts or like backstory to this, this is like, I mean, it was like 5 years in the making from when Ben Stiller saw, I think he came across the pilot episode script on, it's like a sci-fi horror list called, or like whatever. It's where you can post your scripts to possibly be taken up. It's called Bloodlist, I think, or something like that. And Ben Stiller came across it there, and when he met the writer director, he basically said to him like, what I think I wrote it down. He said something to the effect of like, he thought it was a pilot that most would be super impressed by, but would ultimately pass on. And then to that, he said, let's do it. Cause I think he could he could see it being a challenge, and I think it aligned with a lot of, like you said, like the cinematography work and stuff like that. Plus it's super relatable, which we'll get into with the plot and everything like that. But I think big props to him for seeing the potential in it.
Nice.
Yeah. Jed, do you want to give a rundown of it?
Sure. Yeah. We've been talking a lot about, how much we like it, but we should, talk about what it is. So this show Severance centers around a group of 4 main employees at this technology conglomerate company called Lumen Industries. And when they go to work, they've all undergone this elective procedure called severance. And so what that entails is a medical device implanted somewhere in their brain that when they arrive to work every morning, they go into an elevator and go down to their work floor. And this device is triggered to separate their normal life memories from their work life memories. And so what happens is it creates it creates a new persona for that person. And if you can imagine, when you arrive to work, if you can't remember anything about who you are or your outside world, and the only thing you know is the life that you live at work and what you do at work, you might imagine that it's a whole new person. It's the same physical body, but when you're there, you're your own individual. And then when it's time to clock out for the day, they go up the elevator, the little severance device deactivates, and the outside person, what they call the show, the outie, or the normal person, the person who you were before you ever went to work, basically wakes up or regains consciousness and goes about their daily life. And it's kind of centered around this premise of the ultimate work-life balance, where you go to work, you don't remember a thing that happens, you don't remember who you work for or what you do or your coworkers, and you basically kind of regain consciousness at the end of the day, feeling maybe a little tired, maybe a little worn out, but you don't have to worry about what you did or why you did it or who you may or may not like while you're at work. So that's the 3,000-foot view of it. It's four main employees that you keep track of, some coworkers kind of on the periphery, and then there's a management or a managerial set of characters, and then there's a set of characters that these employees interact with when they're outside of work.
Yep.
So it's basically
mostly
3
centered
main
around
sets of people.
family. It's just family members. The cast is actually pretty small for as expansive as the idea of the whole concept is.
Yeah, it really is.
And so one of the coolest elements of this story and how it's driven narratively and through this dialogue is this separation between the inner self, the self that's at work, and the self that is at home, basically, or in the real world. And what they establish really quickly is that, again, it's two completely separate identities, separate personas. And the argument is made that they're completely different people, and that if, let's say, the person on the outside doesn't go to work, well, then that work person ceases to exist. So if you quit your job, that persona inside you that awakens at work no longer exists. And you basically kill yourself in a way by quitting this job. But the catch is you have no idea who you are or what you're like inside work. And there's also no communication between the two yous. That's driven mostly through interactions through the management and through this company itself. So before we go into the company and everything, do you guys have anything more to say about this kind of experience of separating yourself or literally severing yourself? What kind of mind trip that would be?
Go ahead, Spencer. What were you going to say?
I mean, the only thing is it's a unique take on, somebody that's working a day-to-day job that's kind of has that monotony of like, you're kind of feeling useless in a way. Like you come home and you're worn out and you don't want to do anything. And this is kind of an example of, well, if you have a job like that being severed, you maybe have that, job that's useless, but it just cuts it off and you come home and you feel like a whole new person. So I think that I just found that it's really interesting because I think there are a lot of people that probably have a job like that. And it's kind of talks, I mean, in a way, it's kind of referring to, having a job where you don't have to worry about, if it's dragging you down or not. You come home and there you are.
Yeah. I mean, I think on
you're yourself again without having that wear.
On a basis of like consciousness, like conscious thought, that I think is the underlying current that maybe I'm sure that they were really banking on it. And maybe that's what appealed to Ben Stiller is that, I mean, he's very fortunate to have a job that I think he gets to, he gets to pick and choose what scripts, so few of us have that. Even if we went into a career field that we really enjoy, there are things that you have to do that you don't want to always do. And I just remember when I worked in the hospital, but I also was pursuing music full time. I mean, there's no way to keep track of how many days I felt dead inside and just would look at the clock and be like, there's like 5 hours left. And I just, all I wanted to do was be out of there. And so I think that underlying, that's like the first layer. If you're telling someone about this show that doesn't know the show, it'd be so intriguing to know that they're going to explore that concept, especially if you don't enjoy your job, or even if you do, but you just have those moments where you're just like, man, I wish I could be anywhere but here, which I think is a really common thought. Especially in the workplace. It's got such mass appeal on that level. So.
The extra element that I find so compelling about this is that at first, before you would sever yourself, and you think about what would you do, if you would give anything to be out of this, right? For this show anyways, that sacrifice is basically screwing yourself. If you hate yourself so much that you would subject a new consciousness of yourself to know only work, right? Because if you want to get out of work, and the only way to do that is to sever your perception and make it such that another you has to exist at work 100% of their conscious awareness, you kind of hate yourself, right? To go through that.
Self-harm in that for sure.
Yeah.
Because you're creating just like an alter ego to carry the burden of the thing that you hate the most, but that it is still you.
Yeah.
So it's
It's
a
like,
wild
still my
thought.
body, still my body. I'm doing it. But
Yeah.
no, it's
Yeah.
very much an individual that you choose to create to suffer.
Yeah.
Well,
Now, the difference here is that they don't know what the job they're going to do. So they're electing to do this procedure without any knowledge of what they're going to do. So it could be such that they're severing themselves so that they could do some, I don't know, they're going to save lives down in this floor, or they're going to, they could be killing people down there. There's no way to know. They could be torturing people.
Yeah,
There'd be no way to know. And so it's a complete gamble, but this company crafts it in such a way that a lot of almost everything that they do there is psychological manipulation to indoctrinate the employees to feel that what they're doing and the company that they're working for is almost a deity. It's something to be worshipped.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But there are two characters that we learn their motivations for doing this severance. So again, there's 4 main employees that we follow, 2 of which we come to find out why they did their severance. And it's for completely different reasons. And as we kind of go through the plot, we'll talk about how that was revealed. But anything else, you guys, before we head into the company itself?
No, I think that's perfect. I think once we get into the conversation about those 2 characters, I think it really adds to what we just talked about.
Yeah. So this company Lumen is huge. It's a technological conglomerate, huge company. One of the coolest things about this show is that we discussed the last time we did this, is that everything about this company and the setting at which it takes place is very familiar. It's kind of anywhere USA. I think that's how Spenny put it. And the first time we did this, it's any town USA. They don't specify where it is, other than that it's in this town called Kier. And it's when the setting at work is very nondescript, but very recognizable as an office building. It has somewhat of a 70s vibe, kind of a mid-century, somewhere between 50s, 60s, 70s vibe, kind of somewhere around there. It clearly takes
kind
place in the present, though. But
recent present, because it's like, it's hard to tell because the technology kind of plays tricks on you when they're in the severed floor. That's all old technology, like you're talking about, and the furniture and everything. But when they're outside of it, I don't know.
Could you tell by the cars? Could you tell by the year?
Well, in the car, the cars were all like 90s.
90s.
But unrecognizable.
80s, 90s.
That's one of the coolest things about it, is that it was so nondescript. It was completely ambiguous. The entire setting of where they were, where the company was, why the technology was kind of outdated, but still they had this severance technology, right? So it was very clearly advanced. But the cars, the town was so ambiguous as to where it was, when it was, and there's these non-name brand cars. But at the same time, everything was so recognizable as just kind of some kind of American office place.
Well, I mean, Dan Erickson, the one that wrote this, and the creator of it, one of the things he talked about is like even the building itself for Lumen, like his intention was, we're going to make this as a nondescript office building. Like it could be anywhere. I mean, that's the whole intention of this. And so we talked about just the fact that, like we said, it could be anywhere. I mean, it could be any suburb. It could have been a Chicago suburb. It could have been a Kansas City suburb. It could have been a Nashville suburb. You would it could be any of those kind of office buildings. So that was kind of interesting.
So that's kind of where it takes place. If you can picture that in your mind, just some generic, ambiguous, but recognizable office building. The company itself, we know that it's a technology company, but it's
biotech.
It's very unclear exactly what happens when they're at work and what their products are. And the other thing is that the motivations of the corporate structure are completely unclear. So there's, it's a kind of aristocratic hierarchy in terms of management. So the company was founded by this person, Keir Egan, or is it? Yeah, that's right.
Keir Egan.
Yep.
Keir Egan. Okay. This is the Egan family. Yep. And that was the original CEO. And every CEO since him has been an Egan descendant. Yep. And the original Keir CEO is regarded as this loose deity that basically should be worshipped. Yep. That's how they encourage the employees, remember the severed employees, to regard the original CEO Keir and by extension the Egan family, every other CEO Egan descendant, and even the current CEO, even though you don't really you see him once, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there's a good point too on that, is that so one of the things that in this company is the handbook. It's very important. The handbook, it gives the appearance of like it's like a Bible.
Yep.
Like there's a first generation, second generation, and there's conversations about when the new generations are coming up. Yeah. But it is kind of like scripture, and people quote it like scripture.
Yep. Right. Yep. And so that's the upper management. There's this sinister, completely off camera corporate board that makes decisions that the audience only ever hears through other administrative employees. Yeah. And then there's this kind of management team for these severed individuals. So the thing to keep in mind is that the management are not severed. So when they go to work, they know what the severed employees are doing, why they're doing it. But importantly, when they leave work, they retain all of their memories, and they know, and they even keep track of the severed employees.
Yeah, they keep tabs
outside of work, which makes it that much more interesting that the company is, for lack of a better term, controlling or has control of these individuals inside and outside of work without those individuals knowing that. Yeah. Obviously, the severed personas, they call them innies because they only exist inside the company.
Yep.
Right.
They know that they're being operated by the management, but they have no idea. Their outside personalities have no idea that the management is keeping tabs on them.
How soon? I'm just not so clear on this, but how soon into it did you guys realize that that was the case? Because I don't think I immediately was like, oh, that Miss Cobell, who lives next door to Mark. Is it Mark?
Yeah.
Sco?
Yeah.
Mark. Yeah. Lives right next door to him. But like, I guess I didn't really piece it together. I knew that she was down there, but I didn't right away. I wasn't like, oh, she's definitely not severed.
It's been long enough now that I can't remember.
Yeah.
I think it was second or third episode, because there isn't second or third episode. She goes down and she kind of has that shrine, I think we see for the first time. And I think that's where it kind of lays foundation for she has some sort of connection to it. And
either way, I even thought that was, there was a reveal aspect to that. It wasn't readily known to me, at least in my memory of it, that there are for sure people who exist downstairs in the severed area that are unsevered and whatever. I just felt I felt like they did this thing where at the beginning they gave you a peek of the inside and then a little bit of the outside, and then it just started to expand and you started to see the crossover and like all of it was
I think part of, to your point though, about when you know for sure, right? Because you very clearly within the first episode you see the manager next to, or as a neighbor to Mark's outside personality, and then very clearly the manager right inside. What I think they did so cool is to instill that doubt, because her outside personality seems completely different, right, from how she is as a manager. True. And so it's, does she know, or is she severed too? What's happening? And there's just enough doubt to make you question about it. And want to know, want to get more clues and want to find out more. So that's the management. The other thing about the management is that number one, they're not severed, so they have their motivations for how they treat the severed employees and even the outside personas.
Mm-hmm.
That's never revealed, though. That's still very much a mystery, the motivations for this company.
Mm-hmm.
But the really interesting thing about how they treat the severed employees is that they treat them like children.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about why that might be, it's, well, as a person, as a persona, they're only in some cases a couple years old, in some cases a couple weeks old or a couple days old.
Yeah.
And so they're all adults. And while their memories have been severed about their outside lives, they retain enough functional memory to understand, for example, what cars are, right? And what relationships might be like, even though they don't remember ever seeing a car.
Yeah.
Or because it's not like they have access to the internet or any kind of news down there. They understand, they can extract enough context from their memories without having any direct memories about certain things. Yeah. So they're very clearly adults, but they're very naive. And that's the thing. And how that the management and the company manipulates them to, in an indoctrination kind of way, to revere this Kier Egan guy, revere the company itself, through the use of the handbook, through the use of psychological manipulations, of treating them like children, giving them incentives and prizes that only a child will like a finger
traps.
Right? Yeah.
Don't those remind you of, like, the incentives? Don't those remind you of when you're in elementary school and middle school, and, like, depending on how many things you sold was the level of, like, what your prize was?
Yeah.
And it's totally, it's exactly like that. So that's where, like finger trap. Like, who gets you? Like,
But they want it because they think about it, they have nothing down there. They arrive in the clothes that their outside person arrives in. Yeah.
Not only do they, I mean, they have nothing, but they also, and we'll get into set design. Maybe this is a good segue into it, but the room that they're in is a room that should be filled with 50 employees at least. If you're considering the 4-way cubicle, which is basically like, I mean, it's like this or whatever. This. And they're all, they're on each side of it, 4 people total. And that's it. And the rest, there's so much negative space in there that it does really, like, the incentives that they give them, like when Helly finishes her, she meets quota for the quarter. They get a dance party, and it's like a 5-minute dance party. You get to, experience. You get to select your song, and then you get to select your instrument. And it is like 2nd grade and under. Like, but you have done so well. Here are your options. Child.
And even though this what Brian described takes place in the second to last episode, and you come to Helly is the most recent employee, and she from the start doesn't want to be there. She's very actively trying to get out, but she has no power to quit. Right? It's the outside personality that makes the decision by just not showing up. Right. But the manipulation, even on a person like her who hates where she is, doesn't revere the Egans at all or the company, you still see her get excited about playing her little maraca to a little random kind of dance tune. And so the manipulation is so effective that it works on the person that hates it the most. It's so cool because at that point in the series or in the season, they're actively trying to engage in a plan to get out or to tell their outside personalities more about what they're doing down there. And even in that context, she's still excited about this dance party.
It was wild. So one of the most powerful moments was her character. you said she is the one that hates being there the most, just loathes it. I mean, she tries to hang herself in the elevator, like tries to run out the door and then just comes back willingly every time because her Audi, you later find out, is like, she's like a part of it. She's a major part of the company.
She's the next
Egan.
She's an Egan.
Egan.
So she's the daughter of the current CEO.
But what I was gonna say was the video that her Audi made for Annie to watch was crushing.
Cruel.
It was. I mean, she basically was like, her Audi to her Annie was like, "You're not real.
Yeah,
like you don't exist. You
or
like
or you
basically,
don't matter, I think.
Yeah,
right?
you don't matter. Like, and just wow. So that part just shook me.
Yeah, we can tease right now. So this was one of the two employees that we learn about their motivations for getting severed. So she, as you come to find out in the last episode, she is the daughter of the CEO. So she's an Egan. So she's lived her entire life. She's grown up into the reverence of being an Egan, number one, which is a unique perspective for all of the characters, and also understanding what the company is, right?
Yeah.
And what it stands for. But she elects to undergo severance so that she can basically live in both spheres of the Lumen world, right? On the outside, she's going to be the CEO. On the inside, she will be this perfect severed person. What happens, though, is this new consciousness that awakens when she is severed. Well, first of all, she has no idea who she is, right? She doesn't know that she's an Egan, and the management doesn't tell her. But she immediately recognizes that this is not a place to be, that there's too little information, that they're trying to manipulate everything that they do. And so this persona that's born is completely antithetical to the person that she was, who elected to undergo severance in the first place.
Yeah.
And I guess we should just talk about the other person now. So Mark is basically the main character.
Yep.
And he undergoes severance, as you come to learn, because at some point a few years prior to the show taking place, his wife died in a car accident. And he tried to cope with the grief for, I think, maybe a year or so, and realized that it was too much for him to cope with the grief.
Yeah.
Dogs barking in the background. And so what he wanted, unlike what we were discussing at the beginning of this episode, where we were talking about how if you hate your job so much, maybe you would get severed so that at least some part of you doesn't have to experience it.
Right.
Mark, in this case, decides to undergo severance so that some part of him can be free of the grief. So the outside world, the outside version of him, will continue carrying this burden of having basically a life not worth living in the absence of his spouse. But he wanted to try and create a world where some part of him could just not know about it and just be free. He had no idea what he was signing up for, but he was motivated by basically, in a weird way, self-preservation. And which becomes ironic because that person wants to get out.
Yeah.
Yep.
And by getting out, that means he ceases to exist.
Yeah. There's a good quote from his sister when they're talking about it in one of the first episodes, and she basically just tells him, forgetting about her for 8 hours isn't some kind of grieving.
Yeah.
And I think the opening scene is perfect segue into kind of how Severance works in perfection, in the fact that so Mark's crying in his car at the beginning. He's still grieving the death of his wife, and he takes his tissue and he's wiping his tears in his nose, and he puts it in his pocket, and then he walks into work, and they have a locker where they put their stuff in for their Audi stuff, and then they put their any stuff on like a key card. And like he goes down and he gets to the severed floor, and he puts his hand in his pocket, and he grabs the Kleenex and just tosses it in the bin like it's no big deal, and he's just kind of strutting around down to his office. And it was just kind of like really
You guys still there?
a powerful thing, that the fact that, you know, here's the Audi just torn and like so broken up, and then here he is, you know, just going to the severed floor, grabs the tears and just throws them in the garbage and is on with his day. So
yeah, it was wild.
It was.
Where's Jad? I figured he would have had something to say, but he's frozen on my screen.
Yeah, he's totally gone right now. Give it a second.
That's fine. Yeah, that opening scene, it wasn't until later that I don't know, because I didn't watch it all. I tried to, once I realized how good the show was, I intentionally wanted to kind of savor it and not just like slam down, you know, whatever. Is it 7 or 8 episodes?
It's 9
episodes.
Yeah.
That's right.
But no, the first one that I feel like there's a lot of things you have to go back and watch, because you don't know what to expect, and you're kind of like, there's little pieces that you have to like find in it.
Yeah.
And so, like that part, like I remember seeing it, thinking how powerful it was. And then like, I kept thinking about it, and I was like, that's like, this is the whole point of this show. After you watch the whole thing, is like, here he is grieving, puts that away, comes back, and then it's just, you know, right on the severed floor and on with his little happy day.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I definitely am going to go back and watch it again. Hey, Jad's back.
Hey,
we didn't talk about too much while you were gone.
I don't know where you fell off, but I was just talking about the first part of the show.
Yeah. The opening, where it really kind of reveals how separate you really are from your innie, from your Audi. But,
okay. And we're back.
Yeah, we're back. A little technical difficulty, but we made it.
So, okay. I think we've given an overview of the characters. One of the biggest things that progresses throughout this season is the outside version of Mark becoming more and more aware of what may or may not be happening while he's at work.
Yeah.
That's through an interaction with a character named Petey, that was a former Severed employee, that through reasons that aren't revealed, at least in this season, he somehow gets out and has the severance procedure reversed. Now, that isn't explored really at all. We meet the person who did the reversal, that plays a key role in kind of the progression of their innie's plans to notify the exterior people. But the circumstances by which this individual left the company are unclear, completely unclear.
Yeah.
But by meeting this person is actually Mark's best friend. Spenny, you had a note about the quote, right? About when Petey and Mark's exterior met, it was Petey saying that you're my best friend. I'm your good friend.
Yeah. So Mark asked Petey, he's like, were we friends? And he says, I'm your best friend, but you were my very good friend. Implying that Mark's best friend was Petey, but Petey had other friends besides him. And it was just kind of an interesting line to kind of talk about their friendship. Like, he specifically went out of the way to make sure that he knew, like, I was your best friend, but you're not my best friend. Which my friend Alan told me that.
I was just going to say that.
In kindergarten, he says, you're my friend, but you're not my best friend. And I just remember that just tore me apart. But we've moved on from that.
I don't think we ever learned who Alan's best friend was, right?
I don't know. Who knows? I even brought over Power Rangers to his house the first time we played, and I still didn't get to be his best friend. That guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jerk.
For real.
Okay. So throughout the season, there's what I consider to be impeccable pacing of learning more and more. Now, what I really enjoyed about this type of storytelling, and I think there's a literature term for this, but where the audience or the reader, the audience knows basically as much as the character knows. Even though we see multiple perspectives of the management and the the family members and the
Dramatic
employees
irony.
themselves.
Yeah.
Dramatic irony. Okay, very good.
Yep.
Even though the audience, we see all these different perspectives, even though we see the management interact amongst themselves, we still don't know any more about the motivations of the company or the management than the employees do.
Yeah.
They learn more and more throughout the season, but I particularly love that, where the character and the audience learn together what is happening.
Right.
And I think the pacing is fantastic. They do it very well. And like I guess like Game of Thrones, you guys remember how Game of Thrones seasons, the second to last episode was always the big one, right?
Yeah.
The most crazy things happened. And then the final episode of each season was the, the somewhat resolution. It was always a cliffhanger, but it was the enough of a resolution to keep you satisfied and interested.
Right.
And that was exactly the same for this season. The second to last episode was so good because they're engaging in this plan to basically wake themselves up. Their interior selves were going to become aware on the outside, with the goal of telling anyone that they could find as much as they could about the company. Now, this is the kicker. They don't know anybody outside, right? So they could be waking up in a car by themselves, driving in the middle of the road.
Yep.
Remember, they don't know how to drive, right? They've never driven.
Yeah.
Or they could be they assume that they're going to become aware in their house, right? With their family members. They don't know if they have family members. And even if they do, they wouldn't know what relation they were to them, to their outie, right?
Yeah.
So it was a gamble. It was a complete gamble, but they figured out a way to wake themselves up.
Well,
and
what is the character who gets all the incentives? What's his name again?
Dylan.
Dylan becomes privy to this because they use it on him in a prior episode, and he figures out or learns that he has children. At least one.
At least one.
And like he can't stop obsessing about it. And like he even acts out against Mr. Milchek, who it happens in one of the episodes. And so they know that it works, that it can be done. I forget who tells them what it's called exactly, but they figure out how to do it in a control room setting. And I thought it was so cool that he elected to be the one that stays back, so that they can. I thought that was such a cool thing.
Yeah, it's Mark
to write that in.
Mark
his character.
Mark and Helly find it in this room, and they find kind of this book that kind of talks about different things, and it's they learn about the overtime contingency plan, which awakes severed people outside, and so that gets the ball rolling. Where one of them has to stay behind to kind of do this this setup to make sure that they wake up. And Dylan, because he's so obsessed with it, is the one that decides to do it. So it's pretty cool and powerful.
And because think about what that means for them, right? They are to the point where they're recognizing how much psychological torture they've been under by working there, right? And it's to the point where their only course of action is to let their outies know, so that they can stop going to work, right? They're electing to kill themselves. Through this. And it's such a powerful kind of buildup, right? That they like each other, right? And they're banding together to put an end to this company, or try to. They still don't even know what they do. That's the thing. And they don't know what they're doing it for. But they know enough to want to stop.
I think on that note, or speaking to the entire season 1 arc, I think they set themselves up for 3 or 4 seasons at least of this, because there's so much that is still just I still don't know what they do. We don't know what those goats were
you still
for.
don't.
We don't even know.
Yeah.
Now, like, the town is called Kier.
Yeah.
And we don't know what that is. It's so removed from our reality because, as far as I know, there's no place in the United States called Kier or anywhere else that I know of, at least. Maybe whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's a fictitious place, so there's nothing rooted in reality about it. So are people, and then oh yeah, I didn't realize this at first. A friend of mine told me about this, and I was like, oh my god, like it's just a minor detail that I missed, but like when Mark's sister was about to give birth, she went to a birthing retreat place. It's a cabin in the woods kind of thing. And there are like multiple cabins. And I guess you can, depending on your income level or however much you want to invest in that experience, you can have like a really nice place or just like something basic, whatever. Well, the lady she met next door, she like really needed coffee or something like that, met her and got to know her in conversation, and then saw her the next day, I think. And it was like down in a park
after the babies were born.
That's right. And went down and like said hi to her, and you could tell that the lady had no recollection of who she was. So then clearly she was severed for the birthing process. So then it doesn't just exist.
She gave the baby a completely different name too, which was another thing, because she introduced asking about the baby's name, and she looked at her like,
So that was the wife of a senator who was lobbying to get Severance to be, I guess, less regulated than it was, or basically to promote Severance. And so that was the only indication that a member of the population, or that Severance was extending outside the population. And so I think at this point we can transition to maybe theories and just kind of other just unanswered questions, because basically,
can we add one piece here before we jump in? Because we didn't talk about Rickens, and I think Rickens is an important character in this. Rickon is Mark's brother-in-law, and he is an author, but it's like these kind of like self-help, like unlock your inner self kind of books. And throughout the whole series or the season, this book gets passed around to all the people in the macro data refinement group. And there's a quote that they kind of live by, and it's, "Our job is to taste free air. Your so-called boss may own the clock that taunts you from the walls, but my friends, the hour is yours." And it's just this powerful quote that they all like kind of rally behind. And it just kind of is interesting because he's a really funny character.
I read a little thing when I was just looking up like interesting facts about Severance that maybe I would have missed just watching. And I think Adam Scott is his name, Mark, the guy who plays Mark Sco. He is quoted saying something to the effect of like, Rickon's book is actually like 50 pages of material that should be published, because it does have like more things like that in it. Yes, it's not. I don't know the validity of that, but it was just a part of the article that I read, and I think it's really interesting because they did put a lot of detail into it. It's a self-help book. It seems like it maybe probably doesn't have anything to do with Severance, but I think because he's in such opposition to it, it clearly was written with the intention of being like, you don't need to like sever yourself to learn about yourself. Like it's all unified as one in you.
Well, that kind of leads me to another short aside of just how good the production for this show is, because so this is an Apple TV Plus show, and Apple Books put out this free 30-page book, short story, as a companion to the Severance show. And it's about Severance. It's not about any of the characters in the show, but it is a companion piece that, you read in a few minutes. It's really good. And the fact that even exists, it's basically fan fiction that they put out for themselves, right? For free. It's totally free for anyone.
That's wild.
And it just adds to how good this entire, everything about the show is so good.
I did want to.
It's been hard to kind of, for all of us to kind of get to all the points, because I think There's so much to this. Like you have to see
Yeah.
it. Like we're just taught. We're at the
Yeah,
tip of
like,
the iceberg.
I know-
we're discussing.
Yeah, we're kind of just bouncing from thing to thing, and so in some senses, this stream of consciousness. But there is so many aspects of it that I think I mean we all feel are worth mentioning. Like you mentioned, just the design of the story, but also the design of the set. It made me think because I was looking at the thing that little tidbit or whatever, and I remember I wrote down that the set design, the place that the floor that they work on, the severed floor, and the hallways, they do a very specific reveal of the hallways and the extent of them when they're like initially walking in the building, and it's a scene that like it takes so long, and I'm like, oh my god, like they just keep turning corners and it's more white walls and more whatever, but it's like that is the preamble to your understanding of like, wow, this is actually a labyrinth. Like it is a maze.
There's no way. Yeah, it's confusion for
yeah.
the watch, for the the person in the audience.
Yeah, and to that, the interesting thing that I found was that Miss Cobell, the lady who plays Miss Cobell, she actually continuously got lost in the on the set trying to get to where she's supposed to be because it was literally a labyrinth. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, which is cool. But anyways,
if any of you or the listeners have ever delved into this concept of liminal spaces, it's I guess as a definition, a liminal space would be a space, an interface basically between two different things, but it's often portrayed on the internet as kind of eerie, recognizable but empty space, or the idea of an empty office where there's a lot of repeatable things, and it's all based off of the psychology of things that are recognizable but unsettling for reasons that can't be explained. And that space down there it's just a bunch of white walls and corridors and junctions, and there's nothing overtly unsettling about that or scary about that, but it becomes unsettling to think about things like how do you navigate down there, right? There's no arrows, there's no directories for how to get to point A to point B. And the other aspect is that it's seemingly endless, right? It's so big and completely empty.
Yeah.
And part of the narrative is these 4 employees realizing that there are other people working down there.
Yeah.
And there are interactions and relationships that develop from that.
Yeah.
But Brian, you mentioned the goats. So at one point, the audience and the people working there understand that. So they work in this division called data macro refinement. That's where the main characters work, and they sit on computers all day and do seemingly mindless stuff.
Yeah.
There is a department called optics and design, which produces artwork for the severed floor, all in the guise of reverence for Keir Egan and the company itself as this Christ-like figure. And for a long time, you're just aware of those 2 departments. Well, then they kind of stumble upon this 3rd department that is just a single guy taking care of baby goats. And it's
in a white room.
In a white room, and you don't know why, and they don't know why. They're just as unsettled by it. And
all he says,
all
he says is, "They're not ready. They're not ready yet." And it's the fact that that's like his only dialogue. It's so unsettling, that whole
scene. And he's so distraught by it, right? He's very emotionally distraught by the thing is, he's not surprised by seeing them, but they're surprised by seeing him, right? So obviously we've just touched on what we think are just kind of the cool, interesting parts. There's obviously there's many more elements, like Mark's wife, who he thought was dead, is actually alive and is another Severance employee. And so let's transition now to theories, because this would be my first theory for the show. Mark's wife died in a car accident, and as we talked about, that's what motivated him for the grief of her loss, is what motivated him to get severed. Okay. That was a year or so him getting severed was a year or so after her death.
Mm-hmm.
And he had been working there for at least 2 years, right?
Right.
So there's 3 years, at least 3 years between her death and the point of view, the current point of view for the show for him.
Yeah.
Then at some point they introduced this other character in this other department, I guess, called the Wellness Center.
Yep.
And it's this counselor called Miss Casey.
Mm-hmm.
And her job is to basically kind of settle them down. If they're getting agitated while they're at work, her job is to settle them down.
Yeah.
And she's a somewhat new employee, basically.
Right.
Well, it turns out that person, Miss Casey, or the body, that is Mark's wife that he thought was dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So my first theory is that, and then at some point she gets fired and she has to go to what they call the retirement floor, which was, so they took an elevator from the building down to this severed floor, an undisclosed amount of like depth.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you find out later that there's another elevator further down, and it's very ominous. It's in this dark corridor hallway, and it's just one door with a red arrow pointed down. And you see, as she's getting fired, she approaches this elevator, and that's it. That's all from the audience's perspective of seeing her. So the interesting thing is, and she's talking to Mark, and she's describing how she's getting fired, and she's kind of afraid about it because she's only a few months old, as she puts it, and she's getting fired, and she doesn't know if she's going to cease existing or not.
Yeah.
So the thing is, now this leads into my theory, is that Brian talked about the town Kier and how it's kind of weird. And throughout the show, they talk about loosely that Lumen Industries, this company, has control over the town and various elements of the town, even the healthcare system, the police department. So my theory is that they describe her getting in a car accident, Mark's wife. And so my theory is that Lumen probably realized that she was either dead or near dead at the hospital and just decided to take her and do some type of experiments on whatever else they did. And they severed her in the process, I guess, throughout the course of a couple years, right? Because it would have been 3-ish years until Mark saw her again.
I mean, she could have been in a coma.
She could have been in a coma.
Number of things why they had to wait to sever to do the. Yeah. Well, we don't know the answer. But
we don't know anything about it. And so that floor, though, this retirement floor, leads into another character and another theory about this character we haven't talked about yet, Merv or something. He's one of the oldest severed employees, and he's the one that's the most indoctrinated at the beginning. Yeah. He's guided by the handbook. He has clear reverence for Kier Egan and the Egan dynasty.
Yeah.
Right.
And he very later I guess in the last episode, in one of the later episodes,
right at the end of episode 8, so the one right before the season finale, it goes to him. Yeah,
I think at some point earlier though, you see him on the outside and he's just painting. So his Audi, the only thing he does is obsessively paint the exact same image. And throughout, at this point in the season, you don't know what that is. You just see this really dark corridor and the elevator with a red arrow down. And you then come to find out that that's the retirement elevator.
Yep.
And his entire existence outside of work is obsessively painting and painting and painting and painting this one image.
Yep.
And you then later realize that he may or may not be in the Navy or a veteran of the armed services. And but the other element of Merv is that he's the only one that has these images or visions of basically kind of black goo spreading down, coming out of the ceiling, coming down his cubicle wall, getting on his hands, getting on his keyboard and stuff. None of the other employees seem to experience that. He's the only one. And he's the oldest person there.
Yeah.
Yep.
So my theory is that he was this veteran or an armed service person, or maybe an active duty at the time. And he probably had some type of PTSD experience and was given the opportunity or something to undergo severance as through maybe a military kind of R&D thing to undergo this experimental severance procedure to basically kind of block off that PTSD version of himself.
Yep.
And I think that he's the only one that has some memory of that retirement floor.
Yeah.
And my theory is that he's been there for a really, really long time, and he's been somehow recycled multiple times or retired multiple times to the point where his brain can't handle it anymore. And he's just kind of, the goo is just kind of some kind of destruction within his mind. So those are two things that I want to talk about.
We speculated on the, because he keeps painting the same thing over and over. And one of the things we looked at was, so art therapy is one of those things that the veterans do for helping PTSD.
Yeah.
So we thought maybe that is something that goes in with it.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting thought about kind of being reused over and over and over again until it's mush.
Yeah. I was going to say, so you were saying Merv, it's Irving, I think. Irving. Irv for short, maybe. I think that's what it is.
Yep.
But I did want to say, one of the things I wrote down was that his budding relationship and the person he comes to really adore is a guy named Bert, who is part of the O&D, the optics and design unit. And the actor, actually, the guy who plays Irv, insisted that Christopher Walken be Bert and convinced him to play that part because he felt like it would be whatever, the kinship or whatever. They've been in movies before, and it is perfect. But I guess this isn't really a theory as much as a question, but like it kind of seemed like, so yes, I think he's definitely been recycled, but I think he was a higher up before.
Interesting.
Because how he found Bert's name and where he lived kind of seemed like he was rummaging through records like Severance. There were people who had been severed. And that's how he came across Bert and his address and all of that. So I think that his character, we'll probably learn more of his backstory and probably the trauma associated with however many procedures he's had done or however many times he's been like reset and recycled.
Yeah. I do have a theory about what you just said, or a possible explanation for what you were saying. Because you were thinking maybe he was a higher up. My theory is that he was he was one of the first people to undergo severance, right? And so it may not have been that good. Yeah. And so he retained some memories while he was there. Yeah. Enough to where his outside person could remember these things, right? These people or these locations or something. Yeah. And so over time he's been recycled enough to get him to a point where the severance is really good.
Yeah. So what you just said made me think of a possible, I guess, forthcoming thing. So clearly there's a whole, the two departments butt heads for reasons we don't know. There are paintings that seemingly they almost like, at one point there was a painting of the MDR, because of the blue tags attacking. Like the painting was brutal looking, and it looks like there have been like warring between them. And the fact that you say that he seems to be like a decorated veteran, and also that his general demeanor now that his severance is in a good place, like you said, has him wanting to befriend and join and show that these two departments aren't warring against each other or whatever. It's like their two characters are bringing them together is kind of an interesting thing to think about in terms of like, we don't know why there were like fight cards, like cards that like, I don't know, like the cards that showed like how to correctly judo chop or something like that. I don't know what it was, but it was like, clearly there's some like, I don't know, like it just makes you think it's like a game. But I think he maybe that's part of his PTSD is whatever happened on the floor with the two warring departments. I don't know.
I want to say, I think that was kind of explained, because if you remember, Dylan was another macro refinement person. He's one of the four people.
Optics.
He was always referring to this kind of urban legend of O&D and data macro refinement having this brawl at some point and people dying.
Yeah.
He wasn't a part of it, but he remembered this lore of it happening. And what Irv and what was his name in O&D? Christopher Walken's character? Bert.
Yeah.
Bert showed him that the two versions of that painting, right? Where the O&D people are attacking and one where the MRD people or
MDR, macro data
macro refinement, whatever. I can't think.
It's MDR, macro data refinement.
Yeah.
Whatever. Doesn't matter.
Clearly.
But the thing is management told O&D to paint both versions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they probably promoted this urban legend thing. And I think it was Bert and Irv talking about how they just don't want the two departments to interact with each other. I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That they're actively trying to keep these people as far away physically and emotionally apart from each other as they can.
Yeah.
And I think that, so you were talking about the fight cards, right?
Yeah.
They reveal that O&D is actually a much bigger department because they're 3D printing thousands and thousands of objects that have nothing to do with MDR or O&D. It's a bunch of milk jugs and axes and stuff, and then fight card or instructional cards about how to fight. And that kind of leads into just kind of general theories about what the hell Lumen is doing.
Yeah.
And why there's so much space down there.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, I think in the first episode, actually, Mark is telling Helly that they are planning to expand, right? They're going to expand in the near future. He doesn't know when. He doesn't know why. He doesn't know what for.
Okay.
But it seems as though they are preparing for a bunch of people to live down there or something. Yeah. And I guess with the instructions for how to fight, maybe they're going to build some kind of army or something, or who knows? I mean, the sky's the limit with these theories because, again, nothing is described. But by all appearances, it seems like they are preparing for a lot of people to need stuff. Yeah. Like either living stuff or weapons or. So
have either of you read anything on Theranos? It was this health technology company that their proposal was you could use a drop of blood to do a bunch of tests.
That was one of the whole scam, right?
Yeah, that was a whole scam. But within that is exactly how they ran the company. Like everyone was siloed, so you could not if you were in a specific lab, you could only work at a specific lab. People upstairs couldn't come downstairs. Like keeping people completely segmented and not knowing what the other people are doing. It just it had some eerie comparisons to this.
I guess, Jad, since you daily work with things on such a micro level, when you consider that this might be like a larger, like human-based experiment, or I guess that could be a theory that these are test subjects testing whatever, because we don't know why they're doing what they're doing. We don't know why they're separated. I guess when you're trying to get to the heart of a hypothesis, the best thing you can do is like isolate the variables. And so it makes sense, I guess, from a scientific research study or whatever, that point of view, that you would try and not have cross contamination of things, which maybe that's like a reason.
That's a great point. But, that reminds me of one of my first theories about this show too, about data, the process of data macro refinement. Yeah. Because we haven't talked about it yet, but it's basically they just, for 8 hours a day, these four characters sit in front of their computer and look at a grid of numbers, and they're just told to group a group, like within this grid of numbers, they're supposed to find
Scary
a
numbers.
number that kind of speaks to them emotionally and put it in a bin. And that's
we
actually
found the 4 ratios. I think we talked about it.
Yeah. The numbers are supposed to elicit, I can't remember exactly now, but it's basically fear, joy,
they call it
angst.
woe, frolic, dread, and malice. That's how the names at the bottom are 2 digits: WO, FC, DR, and MA.
This, by the way, is if you read the companion book, they talk about it in detail because it's actually a handbook. In some parts, you see the handbook for a data macro refinement, or refiner. So it talks a lot about that. But my theory was that it's just nothing, right? It's not for anything. They're not doing it for any purpose. They're just doing it to test the severance procedure in some way. Now that theory was I don't necessarily think that might be the case anymore because of this companion piece book.
Yeah.
They talk about how a severed employee was doing their data macro refinement and had a really successful day, whatever that meant.
Yeah.
They just had a good day that the management was really happy about. And then that same day, basically that same time, a city bus was destroyed through a seemingly act of terror, but nobody took credit for it. Mm-hmm. And so that was the first indication for the show or the book that what they're doing down there does have real world implications.
Whoa.
Again, interesting. They don't, all they say is that this is just important for the company.
It's so loose and yet like it does draw you along. I think my theory is less of I think this is what's going to happen with said character and this plot. It's more so like on the last episode, I got big time first season Westworld vibes where it's all in the shell, but then you realize that the characters within are testing the limits and you're seeing like a greater expanse of it because you actually do get to see who they are outside and how they interact and stuff like that. I think that the second season is going to be probably a major focus is going to be on him trying to find Miss Casey. I don't think that they would have ended on that cliffhanger if it wasn't going to be a major part of the discovery process. But the fact that Irving came across his ledger of people who had been severed, and we don't know if those people are people who have passed away as well. Like, we don't know all of what that was, but the fact that they're all becoming privy to what's going on outside, I kind of think it's going to lend itself to a really interesting like chase to figure out if they're able to get to his wife wherever she is down below. I think that's going to be a major player in the second floor.
I think the other element that I'm curious on is Miss Selving or Miss Cabell. Is she the main manager? Is she truly? Yeah. You know, there's that. She has a shrine of cure, and is it a shrine or because there's a piece where it shows kind of like this armband from a hospital that has the name. I think it's her mother and like a breathing tube. So is she trying to take them down from the inside, or is it that she's just like super loyal to them and those types of things? So you never really get that answer.
Her motivations it points completely contradictory to what she does because she gets fired essentially at one point, and you see her going and destroying that shrine and actively telling Mark, the outside Mark, to quit basically. But then when she realizes that his innie has been activated, she gets immediately motivated to shut it down, right? Either through maybe self-preservation because she would be complicit with whatever they might describe. But see, that's where it breaks down for me because she seems completely done, right, with Lumen. But immediately, I don't know, it's a conflict for sure within herself, but it's
Yeah, because she could have let that happen. If she was trying to take it down,
Yeah.
she could have allowed it to keep happening. Oh,
Yeah.
When Mark called her Miss Cobell and like
Yeah.
walked
so
away.
Cool.
Yeah, that moment was like, oh, like it's about to get real because she knows now that they're on the outside or whatever activated.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm very intrigued by her character. I continuously thought that, and this feeds into that theory that maybe she is trying to take it down, but playing a long game. I felt like a lot of times she was actually not a good actress as a whole, like wasn't selling the part for me.
Yeah. Right.
But I think, I don't know, that's a theory that like she's having to act out acting. Like it's like a multi-layer thing. And so you realize like she's, because her acting as like, the lady next door, whatever, it's not Miss Cobell, but like her acting on the outside is
Miss Selvig.
Yeah, Selvig. Yeah. Not great. And
thank you for saying that. This had always been my biggest criticism of the show is either the casting of, I don't know who that actress was or is, but
Patricia
the
Arquette.
show is so perfect, right? And her portrayal of those two characters seems to be, to me, the weakest point. And I've always been, it's always been a mystery to me, like why they would, how those two things could both be true.
Yeah.
Right. How could they not notice how just kind of not good that acting is?
Yeah.
And so
I want to say, I think it's going to feed into the fact that she's having to like put on a disguise to play both sides.
Yeah.
And play them well.
It really shows when she has outbursts, which isn't that often, but when she has outbursts, it's just kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
It's the acting of her outbursts is not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if it's supposed to be her acting and doing it poorly, then it's amazing. Right.
Right.
Which actually
Great
now
point.
I'm in that train because
I'm hopeful that
makes
that's
more
what it is.
sense. That makes more sense than them casting someone that can't act the part.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know
least
if she's a good actor outside of this. I don't know what she's been in, but
same.
that makes more
Boardwalk
sense
Empire.
to me.
She's in.
Yeah.
She's in a few other things. She was the originally she was in the, oh my gosh, her claim to fame was when she used to be able to read people's minds. It was a sitcom or a show on like CBS back in like the 2000s. I
missed that one.
I'll find it. But
yeah.
So that's really interesting, Brian.
Yeah, I didn't. I definitely at multiple points was like her, the acting's just really not. It's not selling it for me. But But you saying what you said about her like flipping on a dime to defend the company after she was like having this outburst makes me think like she saw them having to bring her back on because she saved the company. It was like a play on her part, which could be really interesting for the next season.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing we haven't talked about yet.
I guess it would be her frustration would be that she didn't get to complete her mission. And that's why she was tearing that thing down.
Yeah.
So getting back in there so she
Very
can finish the work that she's trying to do. That's interesting.
Very cool.
Yeah.
The one thing we haven't talked about yet, because I think we're basically said what we're going to say.
Yeah, I think so.
The other, what makes this show so good to me is that the title sequence is by far the best thing I've ever seen. It's so cool.
Yep.
The music is so perfect.
Yep.
The visuals, it's something if there's an option on a streaming platform, right, to skip the title card, I'll immediately skip.
Yeah. Yep.
But I watched it every single time, even though it was the same every time, right? I watched it every time because it was so freaking good.
Yeah, it was cool.
I think that was the first thing that I said I sent to you guys was that I was just like that. I after I watched it, because I don't know if it's in the first episode, I can't remember, but I do know that.
No,
it's like I think it happens in the second episode, and I just remember watching that and being like, I have never seen something as cool as that. Like, and one thing that I will say, so I did write something down that isn't anything groundbreaking, but I always think it's interesting to know the person who composes these kinds of things. It's so imperative that it becomes the overture, like the thing, like the returning, it has some sort of thematic influence, or I guess to me, a show is strengthened by that. It doesn't always happen in every show, but like if they find a way to bring it in, and it's like the
like Game of
composer,
Thrones, right? It's iconic. A Game of Thrones title, it's iconic, right? That composition, and so it's what you may not immediately, but if you hear that, oh, that's Game of Thrones. Right?
And the one thing, the composer, Theo Shapiro is his name. He created this. He took like these 4 chords and then made a bunch of different, like he created a palette around them to design this like unsettling overture, like piano theme type thing. And then he also created these like reverse piano sounds that eventually led him to the glitch noise that happens at the very, very end, where it's like, and then it's like done. I was just like, when on the last episode, every transition, like from character to character, sometimes it was from the innie to the outie, and sometimes it was from one character to the next. But every time it was like they would what do they call it? It's not screen match, but like you basically like can essentially, like if you put me this close to the camera and you're recording me here, the next scene, you're trying to lock my face in that same spot so that you can glitch between them, and then it. And they used that as
keep
the
it in
overture,
frame, right? The framing is identical.
The framing, like they did one where they transitioned between Mark Sko's character and Helly R's character, and to get to Helly's on the outside from Mark, it was Mark's face at a distance of the camera. Match cut is what it's called. They had him at this appropriate foreground background balance, and it flickered between that and like one of the projections on a wall at the exhibit that Helly was speaking at. And it like flickered between them, and then it like went off of that to her, and I was just like, transitionally speaking, they put so much emphasis on the flow in the last episode, and that was something that Ben Stiller commented on. They worked really hard to make sure that it had such a flow to it that it never felt jarring, but that sound is so unsettling. And so he basically, that the guy said he wanted to evoke the idea of somebody self-fraying. That's the sound that he was going for, and I'm just like, you nailed that that's perfectly
perfect.
And to use it as a transitional piece during the pacing of that last episode is just like, not only did you find a way to put the piano part in there intermittently through all the episodes, but you also found a way to take this like really unsettling sound and make it the transition between every character. It's just really cool.
That entire last episode was they were just showing off at that point. I feel like, they're just showing off at how good they paced the whole season, and to have that final episode be paced the same way and so suspenseful. Not in a like slasher scary movie kind of suspense way. It's just what's going to happen? What are they going to find out? Who are they going to tell? Right?
Is different. It wasn't anxiety inducing. It's not that kind of like, it's not Breaking Bad pacing or like tension. Like,
on the edge of your seat. What are they going to, but the title card. And so we have this surround sound system and a really good subwoofer, and when that bass hits in the title sequence, it's so I don't know. I always crank the volume when that sequence started, because I wanted to feel the bass in my chest. And
no, kudos all around the people. The attention to detail on this one was just wild, and it was enough for me to, even as much as I wanted to be in juxtaposition to you and your thoughts on it. I mean, you did come in hot. You were like, it's only 3 episodes in, and even if they tank the rest of it, it's still the best series ever. And I was like, that's a bold statement, because my comparison for like the best season of anything is definitely season 1 of True Detective. So well done from front to back. And so like I use that as kind of a benchmark. If the plot and the character development and the suspense and the unknowns and all that pulls you through can all be as good as that, that's my level. And it just was like, yeah, I mean, after episode 1, I was just like, I think it's probably going to be right up there.
Well, that's a good segue.
Well, that's a
into,
perfect transition then to the Ascension to 10 scores. Scale. You want to kick us off, Brian?
I don't even remember what I mean, I only have one score.
It was a 2.
Pilot. It was a 2.
It was a 2 for Kroll.
Man, I feel like that was generous in hindsight for Kroll. Well, it's funny. It was good. But this one though, I mean, the scale goes to 10, right? Yeah. I mean, I can't find a flaw because it's unfinished. And because it's unfinished, I don't think I can just.
Well, this is a rating for season 1.
Season 1 only. Okay. Yeah. Man, I think I haven't given any thought as to what the score would be, but I would probably give this like a 9.9. I don't think there's a reason to give it a 10 just because I don't have my 10 discovered yet. But I think as I'm figuring out, I think it's
okay.
Yeah.
Tell us what season 1 of True Detective would be for you.
I don't know. I have apprehensions to giving something a 10 because then it just becomes the benchmark. So I'd probably give that one a 9.9 too.
Okay. So it's equal in your mind.
Yes.
For different reasons, probably.
Yeah. Just so, there's not really a weakness. I guess if there was any weakness, I would say it's Miss Cobell's acting. But other than that, but now we've just said that could be a potential theory.
That could be amazing.
So like it
could be even better than we thought.
Yeah.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time we did this, I'm curious if you've changed your score, Spenny, because we gave it a rating the first time we did this.
Yeah.
So what's
I'm taking a month and a half back to kind of think about it. I still think it's a 10. I still think from just the visual aspects, it's one of the best thing about a show like this is I can go back and watch it and there's so much more details that I can still uncover. And I think that's one of the things that makes a series great, because you know, like The Office, you can just watch it, you know, things are funny, those types of things. But this one actually gives you, like, there's pieces where you can always go back and you can find something, see that there's something that you maybe missed that you can piece together more and more. And I think that's a huge thing to making great shows. And that's why I'm going to give it.
Yeah. What do you think, Jad?
Oh, you already know what I'm going to give it.
You're giving it a 10.
Easy 10.
Easy 10. Okay.
This is a hard 10, not a soft 10.
Yeah, a hard 10.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe
I
want to give this a soft 10. Is it too late to say a soft 10?
You want to give it a soft 10?
Yeah, I would give it I would give it a soft 10.
You too.
Right. Soft
Unbelievable.
10.
Soft 10. Meaning like there's still room for something to be a hard 10.
Meaning, okay, this is what it means, is you round it up to a 10.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
I
don't know what a hard 10 means.
Standard. I'll show you a hard 10.
Somebody was going to say it.
When we did the first recording, I joked and said 15 out of 10, but and that's kind of how I feel, right?
Yeah.
Because the point being that it's so much better. It's so separate from anything else I've seen.
Yeah.
It's so much better than anything else I've seen that it's
totally.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it. Can't recommend it enough.
Same.
And it's sci-fi related. It gives you the guise of thriller and sci-fi, which is really cool. It's, I mean, for the most
it's
part,
funny.
I can't. Yeah, it's funny.
It's
and
funny.
Can you think of another series that's kind of has that sci-fi elements to it that is this good? That's the thing.
It's almost its own genre, right? It's funny. It's sci-fi. It's suspenseful. It's
it's
not scary.
The
but
director he referenced a couple of the movies or television shows that were of influence, and one of the major influences was Office Space.
Oh, interesting.
Which I thought was really
great.
interesting.
Yeah.
Because he also mentioned Brazil, which I haven't seen, and then there was some other show or a couple shows, but like
that's really interesting.
He said the seemingly like that feeling of them being trapped in this work cycle was a major influence, and that makes a lot of sense to me. And that might be where like the more comedic elements and moments, which I think balance the show impeccably well.
Yeah, you need to have those. Yeah,
just did a really good job.
Cool.
Well,
I think this ended up being longer than the first time we did it, but that's okay.
Yeah,
well, it's so hard. You're talking about trying to review something that's 10 hours long, essentially, and trying to, put our thoughts together on things that we like and don't like. And then as we talk, then there's other things that you guys say that I'm like, I didn't think about that.
Plus, there's nothing like it, right? Mm-hmm. We had to spend a lot of time to describe what we're even trying to describe.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of things we missed, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But more to come.
Yeah.
Go watch it, and then you can listen in the blanks.
Yeah.
Or ideally, you would have watched it before listening to this.
Right. Well, yeah.
Well,
Well,
as always, if you want to reach us, you can contact us at boys@ascensiondetailing.com. Check out our YouTube channel. It's
Ascension
Ascension to 10
right?
podcast.
Yeah.
Yep.
Spelled out.
Links. Yep. Links in the description as always. Check out Brian's music companion. I have all those links in the description. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Yeah.
There's a new banger. There's a new banger coming out soon, right?
Yeah. You want to plug anything?
June
music
8th.
videos and stuff?
Yeah, June 8th. One of the music videos we shot over the weekend is for a song that's coming out on the 8th, and that's going to be the beginning of a snowball of releases through this year. So
let's go, baby.
If you like the sound of a summer banger, then I would hop onto Spotify and check it out. June 8th.
Yep. We'll have those links ready to click.
Yes.
And then you can also find us on socials. We do have a Facebook page now. So we have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and
all the good ones.
The Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are all Ascension, the number 2 TEN. So find us there. Follow. Wherever you got your podcasts, make sure you give us a 5-star rating. We appreciate that. Click the little thing to make sure you know when our new ones are coming out on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'll be jumping on to another one soon. I'm going to try and make that happen.
So this will end a basically season of specials. We've had 2. This will
3.
be the 3rd one in a row.
Yeah.
Yep.
We are going to get back to our kind of regularly scheduled programming with single movies to review next week, or not next week. Yeah, next episode will be Starship Troopers 2. And
it's a doozy.
It's a doozy. And we're not sure when Brian's going to get back on, but whenever he does, it'll be special. It'll be a special in itself every time he's on.
It's that special.
When you can Wizard of Oz.
It was 2nd grade, man. You gotta let it go. I can't. It's too good. All right, boys.
All right.
Well, thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's Jad. Bri. I'm Spenny.
Peace. Ascension to 10.